It's funny how betrayal doesn't arrive with a warning. It kicks your door in, eats at your pride, and laughs at the ruins of your trust. I never expected to catch my boyfriend of 3 years pressed up against another man, lips tangled, hands desperate, in the back room of a bar we'd both loved. What stung more wasn't just the act, it was the fact that the man he betrayed me with was engaged. Engaged to Caleb Monroe, a name that would soon burn into my life like wildfire. The first time I saw him wasn't in some romantic, fate-driven way. No, it was in the most humiliating, gut-wrenching moment of my life. He stood in that bar doorway after I'd shoved my boyfriend I should say against the wall, screaming words I didn't even remember. Caleb's face was carved out of stone, calm but dangerous, like someone who'd already rehearsed how heartbreak was supposed to feel. And he just stared at me. No yelling, no tears, just that quiet, cutting disappointment that silences a whole room. I hated him instantly. Or maybe I hated the way he looked, like he still had control when I had nothing left. But hate has a strange way of shifting when grief keeps you awake at 3 a.m., when anger begins to rot inside your chest, begging for release. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't breathe without replaying that night. So I made a decision: if my ex could shatter me, then maybe I could shatter him back. And the perfect weapon was standing right there, his fiancé, Caleb. The plan was simple. Get close to him, peel away his polished exterior, make him hurt. I didn't know if I wanted to ruin his engagement, his trust, or just remind him he wasn't untouchable. But what I didn't plan for, what I couldn't have planned for, was the way Caleb's silence had layers. His calm wasn't apathy, it was survival. And survival, I was about to learn, was its own kind of beauty. Caleb Monroe lived on the quieter side of town. A white-painted house with peeling shutters, the kind you drive past and think was abandoned if not for the soft glow of a lamp inside. When I first showed up under the pathetic excuse of wanting to talk, he didn't slam the door. He didn't yell. He just stepped aside like he'd been expecting me. "Coffee or whiskey?" he asked. "Do I look like I need coffee?" I shot back. His lips twitched almost a smile, almost mockery. "Whiskey it is." That was Caleb. Always one step ahead, but never cruel. His words cut like glass, yet they never left blood. I hated it. I needed him angry. I needed him broken. Instead, he poured me a drink and let silence do the rest. Over the next weeks, silence became our language. I told myself I kept visiting because I was gathering information, unraveling the man who had unknowingly stolen my boyfriend's loyalty. But the truth was, Caleb had a gravity I couldn't resist. He was devastatingly calm, and when he did speak, it was with a precision that left me disarmed. "Why do you keep coming here, Ethan?" he asked one night, his voice low, firelight flickering across his face. "Because I hate him," I said, though even I wasn't sure which him I meant anymore. My ex, or Caleb himself, for existing in this orbit that felt impossible to escape. Caleb didn't answer. He just stared into the glass in his hands, and for the first time, I saw the crack in his armor. His fiancé ex's new lover had betrayed him too. He didn't need revenge. He was already living with the quiet wreckage of it. And maybe that's when my plans started to unravel. The thing about revenge, it doesn't prepare you for tenderness. It doesn't warn you about late-night conversations that crawl under your skin, about the way someone's laugh can fill the silence in your chest. Caleb had a laugh like rain on tin, soft, unexpected, fleeting, and the first time I heard it, something inside me shifted. I caught myself watching him, the slope of his shoulders when he leaned against the porch railing, the way his eyes softened when he talked about books he loved. He wasn't dramatic or loud. He wasn't begging to be healed. He was just living, quietly, and I, in all my broken anger, found myself drawn to that quiet like a man starving. But every moment of warmth was tangled with guilt. I'd come here to destroy him, not crave him. I wasn't supposed to notice how the moonlight brushed against his face, or how his hands, steady and strong, seemed built to hold more than pain. I wasn't supposed to imagine what it would feel like to be the reason he smiled. Yet here I was, imagining, and maybe he noticed too, because one evening, as the sun bled orange over the horizon, Caleb turned to me, his eyes steady. "Are you done pretending?" he asked. My breath caught. "Pretending what?" "That you're here for him, when really you're here for me." The words landed like a strike to the chest. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, to throw the glass in my hand just to break something. But I couldn't, because he was right. Because every night I went home, all I thought about was the way his voice lingered in my head. And for the first time since my world had shattered, I felt something terrifying. Hope. Caleb's words hit me harder than any fight I'd ever been in. Pretending you're here for him, when really you're here for me. I wanted to scream at him, deny it, flip the table just so I wouldn't have to answer. But instead, my body betrayed me. My silence confirmed everything. He didn't smirk. He didn't lean in like some arrogant winner in a game of hearts. He just nodded, almost to himself, and went back to sipping his whiskey like it hadn't cost me my last defense. That night, I lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling of my crappy apartment, every word he'd said echoing in my skull. Was it true? Had I crossed that invisible line? Was my obsession with him no longer about revenge but about craving something I couldn't name? And if it was, what did that make me? The next day, I found myself on his porch again, like some stray dog that didn't know where else to go. He opened the door before I even knocked. "You're early," Caleb said. "You're predictable." I shot back, though my chest felt too tight to make it sound sharp. He didn't answer, just stepped aside like he always did, as though he'd already accepted my presence in his life. That was the most dangerous part that didn't resist me. He let me in, not just into his home but into his quiet world. And that, more than any kiss or touch, broke me down. We sat on opposite sides of the porch, silence stretching between us, filled only by the creak of wood and the chirp of crickets. After a long while, I finally said, "You're not angry enough." Caleb glanced at me, at him, at both of them. He leaned back, his gaze fixed on the fading sky. "What's the point? Anger burns you up. They already took enough. Why should I let them take more?" His calm was infuriating. I wanted him to scream, to break something, to bleed like I was bleeding. But he didn't. He just sat there, whole in his own broken way. "Don't you want revenge?" I pushed. Caleb's eyes flickered to me then, sharp and unreadable. "And what do you think you are, Ethan?" The words cut deep, sharper than he could have known. Or maybe he did know. Maybe he'd seen through me from the start. I swallowed hard, the truth pressing against my throat, but no words came. Days blurred into nights, nights into weeks. Our meetings became a rhythm I couldn't escape. We didn't need plans anymore, I just showed up, and he let me in. Sometimes we drank in silence. Sometimes we argued about books or politics or the kind of music that could save a soul. Sometimes, rarely, he laughed, and every time he did, I felt like I'd won something I hadn't deserved. The world outside us kept spinning. People whispered about Caleb's broken engagement, about the betrayal neither of us named aloud. My ex tried calling me once, twice, then stopped. I ignored him. He was a shadow compared to the quiet gravity that pulled me toward Caleb. But the pull was dangerous. One evening, the air heavy with summer rain, I caught myself staring at Caleb too long, memorizing the curve of his mouth, the line of his jaw, the way his hand flexed against the railing. Desire surged through me, sharp, terrifying. He noticed. Of course he noticed. Caleb always noticed. "Don't," he said softly, but it wasn't anger. It was fear. I stood, pacing the porch like a caged animal. "Why not?" "Because you don't know what you want," he said, his voice steady. "And I can't be another way you try to hurt him." I froze. The truth in his words stung like salt on an open wound. Was that still all this was? Him thinking I was here to use him as a weapon? Maybe at first it had been true. But now the thought of hurting Caleb felt unbearable. "Caleb?" I whispered, my voice rough. "It's not about him anymore." His eyes searched mine, desperate, cautious. "Then what is it about?" I didn't have an answer, not one that made sense. So instead, I closed the space between us in 2 reckless steps. My hand hovered near his, not quite touching. For a heartbeat, he didn't move. Then he pulled away, retreating into the house without a word. The door shut softly, but the sound was louder than any slam. For 3 days, he didn't open the door when I came. 3 days of walking past his house like a ghost, of feeling the absence of his quiet presence like a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. 3 days of wondering if I'd ruined everything. On the 4th night, I found him on the porch again, cigarette glowing faintly in the dark. "You're persistent," he said, exhaling smoke into the cool air. "You're impossible," I replied. We sat in silence again, the distance between us charged. Finally, I asked, "Why do you let me keep coming back?" Caleb looked at me then, his eyes tired but soft. "Because you see me," he said simply. And just like that, every wall I had crumbled. The shift between us was subtle, but undeniable. We didn't talk about what almost happened. We didn't label the glances that lasted too long, or the way our knees brushed under the table and neither of us moved away. But it was therein every shared silence, every lingering look. One night, the storm hit hard. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder shaking the fragile walls of his old house. The power went out, plunging us into darkness lit only by lightning. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was him. But suddenly we were close, too close, our breaths mingling in the dark. "Ethan," he warned, but it was weak, almost pleading. Couldn't stop. I didn't want to stop. My hand found his cheek, rough with stubble, warm under my palm. For a moment he stayed still, trembling with restraint. Then, like something breaking loose, he kissed me. It wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, raw, like two people clinging to the only thing left that made sense. Lightning lit the room, thunder roared, and his mouth crushed against mine like he'd been holding it back for too long. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, his forehead pressed to mine, I whispered, "Tell me this isn't revenge." He shook his head, eyes closed. "It isn't. Not anymore." And in that moment I knew. I was no longer here to destroy him. I was here because somewhere between anger and grief, I had fallen hard, recklessly, completely. But love, especially the kind born out of betrayal, doesn't stay simple. The world outside was waiting. My ex wasn't gone. The whispers weren't fading. And the more I wanted Caleb, the more I realized wanting him meant fighting everything else. And I wasn't sure if I was strong enough. If you've never been kissed in the middle of a thunderstorm, you'll never know how it feels to mistake disaster for salvation. That night, in the dark of Caleb's house, with lightning illuminating his face in fractured glimpses, I thought maybe just maybe love was possible again. But love doesn't stay simple. It never does. Especially when it begins in the ashes of betrayal. The morning after, sunlight felt cruel. Too bright, too exposing. Caleb wouldn't meet my eyes, his shoulders stiff as he poured coffee like nothing had happened. I sat across from him, my body still humming from the memory of his mouth on mine, and wanted to demand what now? But Caleb beat me to it. "This can't happen again," he said flatly. The words sliced through me. I wanted to argue, to throw the mug against the wall just to shatter the silence. But I didn't, because the truth was, I wasn't sure what I wanted either. Revenge had been my compass. Without it, I was just lost. So I nodded, even though every part of me wanted to scream. For a while, we tried to pretend. We went back to our silent porch evenings, our small conversations, our delicate balance. But nothing was the same. Every brush of his hand against mine, every glance that lingered too long, every quiet laugh between us, everything carried the memory of that kiss. And then the world came knocking. Literally. 3 nights later, someone pounded on Caleb's door. When he opened it, my stomach dropped. It was him, my ex Daniel. He looked exactly the same, cocky smirk, perfect hair, the kind of man who thought he could charm his way out of anything. Only this time, he wasn't just mine. He was the man who had betrayed both of us. "Well," Daniel drawled, eyes flicking between Caleb and me. "Isn't this cozy?" Caleb didn't flinch. "What do you want?" Daniel's smirk deepened. "To talk. To explain." His eyes landed on me, gleaming with false sincerity. To fix things. The audacity made me laugh. Bitter, sharp. Fix? You mean after you tore everything apart? Daniel shrugged, stepping closer like he still owned the room. You're angry. I get it. But Ethan, come on. We had 3 years. Doesn't that mean anything? 3 years. 3 years of love I thought was real. 3 years that collapsed in one stolen kiss with Caleb's fiancé. My blood boiled. You don't get to say his name like that. I snapped, my voice shaking. Daniel's smirk faltered. His name. He turned to Caleb, smugness returning. So that's what this is. You're screwing each other now, aren't you? Caleb's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. His silence burned me more than Daniel's words. I stepped forward, chest heaving. Get out. Daniel smirked, but his eyes flicked nervously between us. Fine, but you'll regret this, Ethan. Both of you. He left, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. The silence afterward was suffocating. Caleb sat back down slowly, his face unreadable. He's going to spread it, I said, my voice low. He's going to tell everyone. Caleb finally met my gaze, his dark eyes heavy with something I couldn't name. Then we let him. I stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Are you serious? Do you know what they'll say? What they'll think? His lips twitched, almost bitter amusement. Ethan, they already talk. They've been talking since the engagement broke. Let them. Words can't hurt worse than what's already been done. But he was wrong. Words could hurt. Words could destroy. And in a small American town where everyone knew your business, words could kill. The rumors started the next week. I heard them first at the diner. 2 waitresses whispering behind the counter, their eyes darting to me like knives. Can you believe it? Caleb Monroe, and that boy, what's his name? Ethan? Didn't he just steal him from Daniel? I know. Disgusting. I slammed my coffee down and stormed out, but the whispers followed me everywhere. At the grocery store, on the street, everywhere. Caleb pretended not to hear, but I saw the way his shoulders hunched tighter, the way he avoided certain streets. He'd lived in this town his whole life. I was just passing through. But for him, this was permanent. And the guilt ate at me. One night, I confronted him. You don't deserve this, I said, pacing his living room like a trapped animal. You don't deserve their judgment. Caleb leaned back in his chair, calm as ever. Neither do you. I spun on him, fists clenched. But I came here for revenge. I dragged you into this. If it weren't for me, if it weren't for you, he interrupted, his voice firm, I'd still be sitting in this house alone, pretending I was fine. You didn't ruin me, Ethan. You woke me up. His words stopped me cold. And then he added softer, stop thinking you're poison. You're not. Something inside me cracked. For so long, I'd believed I was nothing but broken glass, sharp, dangerous, destined to hurt anyone who got too close. But Caleb looked at me like I was more than my scars. And God help me, I wanted to believe him. The pressure only grew. Daniel wasn't done. He spread lies, twisted stories, made sure the town saw us as villains in his tragic romance. People who once smiled at me now crossed the street to avoid me. Caleb's business at the hardware store started to suffer. Customers whispered, judged, withdrew. It was war. A quiet, suffocating war. One night, after another day of pointed stares and cold shoulders, I slammed my fist on Caleb's porch railing. We can't keep living like this. We can't just let him win. Caleb studied me, his expression unreadable. What do you suggest? Fight back. Tell the truth. Show them we're not ashamed. His eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker in them. You think it's that easy? That a town like this will listen? Then screw the town, I snapped. Let's leave. Start over somewhere else. Somewhere no one knows us. The words shocked me as soon as they left my mouth. Leave? Me who had nothing tying me down, sure. But Caleb? His whole life was here. He looked at me for a long time and I held my breath. Finally, he whispered, if I leave, it won't be for escape. It'll be for you. But we sat on that porch until the sun came up, both of us knowing we were standing on the edge of something bigger than revenge, bigger than betrayal. Something that terrified us both. Revenge brought me to Caleb. Love almost tore us apart. But it was the world outside, the whispers, the judgment, the venom of Daniel's lies that forced us to decide who we really were. The weeks after the confrontation felt like living under a magnifying glass. Every move we made was watched. Every word was twisted. People no longer saw Caleb as the steady, dependable man who'd grown up in this town. They saw him as the man who'd stolen his own fiancé's lover. They saw me as the outsider who had ruined everything. The worst of it came one Saturday afternoon. We were at the grocery store, trying to pretend life was normal, when an older man I vaguely recognized stepped into our path. He didn't shout, didn't throw a punch. He just looked at Caleb with cold, sharp disgust. "You've shamed this town," the man said. "And for what?" "For him." His eyes flicked to me, filled with contempt. I braced myself, waiting for Caleb to retreat like he always did, to let silence shield him. But instead, Caleb straightened. His voice was calm, but steady as steel. "Yes," he said. "For him." The man scoffed and walked away, but I stood frozen, my chest tight. That single word felt like the bravest thing I'd ever heard. That night, under the fragile light of Caleb's kitchen lamp, I asked the question that had been eating at me. Why me? My voice cracked more than I wanted. Why choose me, when all I've done is bring trouble to your door? Caleb leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Because you're the only person who looks at me and doesn't see what I've lost. You see me. And when I'm with you, I feel alive again." His words lodged in my throat like a prayer I didn't know how to say. For so long, I had believed I was unworthy of love, that I was nothing but the broken pieces of betrayal. But Caleb didn't see the brokenness. He saw something worth holding on to, and slowly I began to believe it too. Daniel didn't stop. He never stopped. He cornered me outside the bar one night, his smirk colder now, desperation bleeding through. "You think he's going to stay with you?" Daniel sneered. "You think this little fairy tale is going to last? You're nothing but a rebound, Ethan. A way for him to hurt me." For the first time, I didn't flinch. I didn't let his words sink in like poison. I just looked him in the eye and said, "Then maybe you should ask yourself why he'd rather be with me than spend another second with you." Daniel's face twisted, but I didn't wait to see his reaction. I walked away, my chest pounding with something that felt dangerously close to freedom. Caleb and I talked that night, really talked, without fear, without walls. He told me about the boy he used to be, the one who stayed behind in this town out of duty, out of fear of disappointing his family. I told him about the boy I used to be, the one who thought love was a cage you stayed in even when the bars cut you open. And somewhere in that conversation, between laughter and tears, I realized we weren't just surviving anymore. We were choosing each other, choosing love, even when the world around us refused to understand it. The decision came quietly. No big speeches, no dramatic ultimatums. Just two men sitting on a porch as dawn crept over the horizon. "Do you want to stay?" I asked softly. Caleb looked at the town stretched out before us, these same streets that had once felt like home but now felt like prison. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining with a certainty that stole my breath. "No," he said. Then he looked at me. "I want to go wherever you are." The weight of his words broke something open inside me. For the first time, I wasn't running from pain. I was running toward something, toward him. We left 2 weeks later. Not in the dead of night, not in shame, but in daylight, with our heads high. The whispers followed us to the edge of town, but they didn't matter anymore. Because on the other side of that town was an open road, and at the end of that road was a future we hadn't dared to imagine. The drive was quiet at first, the hum of the engine filling the silence. Then Caleb reached across the console, his hand warm against mine. I looked at him, and he smiled, small, fragile, but real. In that moment, I realized something. I had come to Caleb for revenge. But revenge had burned away, leaving behind something purer, something fiercer. Love. And love, messy, complicated, imperfect love, was worth every risk. Months later, We were sitting on the porch of a small apartment in a city where no one knew our names. Caleb was reading, his glasses sliding down his nose, while I watched the sunset paint the sky in streaks of orange and pink. "You're staring again," he murmured without looking up. "Can't help it," I said. He glanced at me then, eyes soft, lips curved in that quiet smile that was just for me. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that this was the ending I'd never seen coming. Not revenge, not ruin, but the simple, extraordinary miracle of two broken men finding wholeness in each other. Love doesn't erase the scars. It doesn't silence the whispers or rewrite the past. But it gives you something stronger than all of its something to hold on to when the world tries to tear you apart. I approached my cheating lover's fiancé for revenge. But what I found was a home I never knew I was searching for. And this time I wasn't letting go. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.